All right, I'm just going to take the first 10 minutes or so to kind of set the stage for our friends Seth and Lisa. And a couple of informational things. One is that Marriage Resource Center used to have down here on 616 North Limestone. We have changed our name, and so we basically put the new brochures at your tables, and you can kind of see what that looks like for you. We're basically just trying to get the word out about the name change. We will always do marriage, and just because marriage isn't in the name doesn't mean that we're not doing that anymore. We have classes and coaching and resources for couples. That will always be the flagship. All right, I'm going to take a page out of Jeff's book and ask you to stand again, and I'd like for you to remain standing if you prefer to have relationships that are mutually filled with trust. So it goes both ways, right? So it's trust both ways, not just one way. So is everybody standing? I am hoping that everyone is standing. Remain standing if you have never experienced the breaking of trust in a relationship. If you have never experienced the breaking of trust, either yourself or with another person, you have never experienced the breaking of trust in any relationship. We're not talking now about spouses. We're talking about any relationship. Sit down if you've never. Sit down if you've never. Okay. Now I don't have anything to give you, but the 4 glasses. Yeah, there's still some left over there. You know, it's interesting to see how we want trust in relationships, but for the most part, if your experience is accurate, we've all experienced the breaking of trust. And that's not the way that it was in the beginning. In the beginning, God had a design for high definition relationships. And I don't know if you know much about HD TVs. Sometimes when I walk into Best Buy, I mean, you can literally see little pieces of insects and grass. Some of the technology on high definition is amazing. The 4Ks are out right now, and that's like 8 megapixel. The next generation that is already in progress is 8K, and that's 33 megapixel. Right now, you could buy one for $130,000 if you really needed one. I mean, that's kind of the technology, but it'll be here in the next couple of years. Our eyes, 576 megapixels. And so the technology hasn't even started to get as high definition as our eyes. So God created us for high definition relationships. We see that from the beginning in Genesis 2. By the way, my wife is here, Rhonda, and this year we'll be married for 40 years. And put up with a lot. And you know, at the beginning, the very first relationship that was created was the man and the woman. Rhonda, could you just come up here? I'm not going to ask you to say anything, although Rhonda co-leads with me many times and co-presents. But when Adam experienced Eve for the first time, he was pretty excited. And it says at the end of Genesis that they were both naked and unashamed.
And we're not demonstrating.
And we're not going to demonstrate that. But what we want to say is that can also be translated that they were both naked and there was no confusion. There was absolutely nothing standing between them. That's where they were. That's what they were experiencing. And I don't know how you would characterize this, but we have experienced lots of confusion, misunderstandings in communication in our 40 years of marriage. It just happens. We're human beings. And so you can go sit down now, thank you. After the fall, there was not that sense of intimacy. There was not that sense of closeness. Instead, it was shame and blame. And Adam, who was so excited about this woman that God had for him right there, he created him, and he saw bone of my bones and flesh of my flesh. He had just named the animals, and each one of them had a pair. And wow, here's one for me. Now, Adam, Because of the trust that was broken with God, which led to the first sin. They didn't trust that God had their best interests. Now he's saying, that woman that you put here with me. And he was blaming and he was shaming, and there's no longer high definition. How many of you grew up on televisions that had the old, kind of lines, and they would kind of flicker a little bit, not near the definition that the ones we have today? In fact, the closer you get, the less you see because of the lines. And that's basically what happened to the human race. And if you look on your outlines there, it's almost like someone turned the dials all the way to the left, all the way from confiding over to hiding. Because Adam and Eve went and got the biggest leaf that they could find in the Middle East. It was called the fig leaf. And by the way, there may be, if some of you don't have these, there you go. It was the fig leaf, but that even wasn't enough. God had to kill an animal in order for them to be truly covered and not deal with the shame. Someone turned it all the way from transparency over to deception. And so instead of being 100% open and transparent and honest, now they are deceiving. And you just look at you follow the lineage. And instead of intimacy, now there is infidelity. There is a breaking of faith. And it's not just sexual infidelity. There can be financial infidelity. There can be emotional infidelity. Lots of different kinds of infidelity. I was exposed to pornography when I was 12 years old. And for years struggled with that. Just kind of kept going back to it. It happened in a construction van when my parents were building a house. And I just happened to wander out one day and I saw a whole van full of pinups, Playboys. And as a 12-year-old boy, that got my attention. And then there would be shame, and then more curiosity, and shame and curiosity, just kind of going back and forth and back and forth. And I wish that it had stopped there, but it didn't. And so for years, I struggled with that. I'm so grateful to be free, but that's a form of infidelity as well. Although I've never slept with another woman other than Rhonda, it's infidelity. It's giving my assent and my affection to another person. We are so grateful to have with us today Seth and Lisa Perdue, who have gone through quite a journey in their marriage. And if you guys could just come on up, we're going to pray for you before this, but if you could go ahead and have a seat. We are so grateful for their courage. And we basically said, you don't have to do this if you're not ready or if you're not where you're at. But they have graciously agreed to do that. By the way, Seth and Lisa are both on our board at Encompass Connection Center, and we appreciate just their hearts of generosity and of giving and of being a blessing. And so we're just going to pray for you guys right now. Father, just give a sense of your blessing and courage and clarity right now as we talk through for the next 30 minutes or so the secret that really was injurious to their own relationship. We pray not only for them, but for anyone who will be hearing the story, not only here, but through videotape as well. In Jesus' name, amen. All right, well, let's kind of start easy and just have you talk a little bit about how you met. How in the world did the two of you connect in the first place? And let me turn you,
there we go. We have kind of a funny story with how we initially met the first time. Met the first time. We both worked at the Nutter Center. I was in the Air Force, lowly airman in the Air Force at the time, and Lisa was going to Wright State, and I worked security, and Lisa was an usher. And so we kind of met, and she used perhaps the best cheesy pickup line of all time, which should have really come from me, but she blew me away with that. So anyway, so we dated for a few months, and it just wasn't.
It was a year.
For a few months. It was a year. How do you get from a year to, okay, all right.
Again, Venus and Mars, right? As I know. So we dated for a while, and then it just was, it wasn't the right time, and so we ended up going our separate ways, and a year or more, a little over a year afterwards, we'd been broken up and we're on with our lives. A guy I actually worked with the husband and the wife, and they happened to have a daughter who went to the Montessori school that Lisa worked at the time. Unbeknownst to us, they tried to set us up on a blind date. And so we didn't, it wasn't just we got there and realized, oh wow, hey, that's crazy. It was that we kind of found out beforehand, and so we talked. It's just kind of a funny way of how it all worked out.
What first attracted you to each other? I mean, what was it that?
Yeah, that's obvious, I think, for me. But for her, I can't answer. For her, I can't answer that.
I would say that's true, but that would be kind. Yeah.
We just.
Yeah, but right there. Yeah, there you go.
We just always had fun. We got along. We communicated well together. We spoke easy, and dating, just had fun.
Now, you got married, and then you have several children, a stepdaughter. Tell us a little bit about them, just quickly, their ages and kind of where they are.
Hannah is my daughter. She's 21. And then we have Ryan together, that's 14.
And Ryan just had a mishap. What was the mishap, eh?
Yeah, we just found out Tuesday he's got a fully torn ACL on his left knee. So
baseball.
You'll see this kind of, as we kind of get into this, and you see some of just over our last year, really.
Lots of stuff.
It's just a lot of things that have happened.
Lots of stuff. Yeah.
We call that this week Satan was just really on the attack for us for today. Mm-hmm. Absolutely. So.
Yeah. To be clear, he did not want us to be up here today. That's for sure. That's for sure.
Right. And we do have people praying. We send out an alert in our way, and so to just pray. So let's get right to it. About 3 to 4 years into your marriage, Lisa, you got a letter in the mail. Tell us about the letter.
I did. I received a letter in the mail saying that Seth was having wow, I am like 2 seconds into this and I'm already going to cry. That Seth was having an affair with a coworker of his. And I don't remember exactly the timing, but recently I had just met her actually at a lunch that he had taken me to. And he denied it, and I had no proof, or, just I had to trust what he was telling me was true.
And so at that point, you did just assume that it was a false allegation, correct?
Yeah, he had a very believable story that it was just someone that was jealous of his moving forward in his career path, someone that was jealous, and they just had it out to get him. And that was an easy way to hurt him. Yeah.
And so, Seth, when she brought this up to you, what was going through your mind, through your heart? I mean, obviously, you know what the truth is about the matter. What were you dealing with?
A lot of just being lost and broken and afraid to lose what I had. Clearly selfish in my thinking and my reaction to it. And
when you say lose what you had, are you talking about your marriage?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Yeah, absolutely. I come from a family of divorce, and one of the things that I always thought was, I'm not going to go through that. I want the cycle to end with me. Aunts, uncles, grandparents, it goes back deep. And so here I was in a situation where I had messed up, and there was that chance, and so it was almost like the self-preservation thing kicked in, and at that time it was about me and not wanting to continue that cycle.
And so to protect this relationship,
Yeah, right.
you denied it, and you kind of went on. Was there more that to that
I
story?
just wanted to say, hindsight, we probably would have been divorced. If I knew for sure and for certain then, we would have been divorced. Yeah, I would
Because
not
you weren't
have.
as far along in your relationship and you didn't have maybe the equity?
Well,
Absolutely.
yeah, well, but a little bit about our relationship. We lived together before we were married. There was a lot of sin through our relationship, and so I saw that this was probably one thing. It was a rough marriage early on. I do want to jump ahead and say that as we go on with this, it's only by the grace of God that we're married today, because we had every reason in the early years to not be married.
Yes. Yeah. Well, let's roll forward now to last November. Last November, secret came out, and kind of, Seth, if you could kind of tell us how that happened for you, what led up to this coming forth?
Sure. We have our relationship over the past year. We went through a lot of things. I knew what I was doing wasn't right, and I actually want to go back a little bit. After that, we started going to church. We started going to fellowship and getting involved with the church, and I just want to kind of, to lead up to November, and I think a lot of what helped me ultimately make the decision that I did, is guys like Jeff and Jeremy, guys sitting here right now who I had relationships with and were involved with. And it's hard to explain, but inside it was hard for me when moments would get deep. And going deep in conversation with Jeremy or Jeff, or meetings with Jeff. You guys, everybody here knows Jeff, right? So if you're not prepared to sit down for a conversation with Jeff, it can make you sweat. And so those types of things. In a good way. I'm not saying that in a bad way. I see,
No, we wouldn't think in a bad way at all. No.
Nobody has experienced that.
Yeah. So it was hard. I mean, it was always, there were times where I was just like right up at the edge, and it just was there, but I just always was carrying this weight. I had just like this anchor pulling me back, and it was the guilt and the sin that I wasn't able to fully get over. And I was trying myself to get over that. So after a little bit of time, we started coming up with excuses why we weren't going to church. One thing after another, we kind of fell back from those influences in our life that really could have helped us through that moment. And then one thing leads to another, and I start flirting with, it's just one thing leads to another, and I ended up in another situation where I was unfaithful to my wife, and God has had a number of I've had a number of situations in my life that were eye-opening, life-changing situations, and it was I think something that for me I would react for a while, and then it would just kind of go back. Well, a year ago this month, prior to that in February. Lisa had surgery, and I was going to kind of let her transition to her telling this story, but I think you can kind of start to see where God was able to break through, because I was praying for this to end and to be able to just come clean. I was praying for it, but it just felt like God wasn't there. I know He was. I know it was me not listening.
And so these physical challenges that you want to talk about, these physical challenges almost led you to a softening of your heart. So let's just talk about what those were quickly, and then we'll get on to.
I had a big surgery in March. I had to depend on him. For everything for a good couple weeks. Through my recovery, we found out that he had cancer. So then we went into that, and I would have said we had a fantastic marriage. We got along. People that saw us thought we were good, but we had some rough patches. Through those, medical health times, we just relied, and it just connected us more than we really ever had in our marriage. And then November
interesting
10th,
perspective of how-
November 10th came.
Okay, it's an interesting perspective of how even negative situations like that, negative events, can be positive in the overall picture. So November 10th.
Yeah. So after that, after my recovery from surgery, it was I had an internal conflict like I've never felt in my life going on, where God was just, he had a jackhammer trying to break through, and my heart felt like that. I felt it, and so I started, even before November, I started working on a letter that I sat down because I knew it, praying and just, and I knew that I had to come clean in order to be able to have, if there was a chance of having a future with her, with my kids, I had to come clean. And I was tired of running, I was tired of doing it by myself, I was tired of fighting, and that, it was just, that carried us to that point. So I had the letter finished for a while, and I didn't know how I was going to do this, I didn't know when I was going to do this, but
Was this a handwritten letter? Was
It
it
was.
typed? It was a handwritten letter. And so tell us about the,
yeah. So so my attempt to come clean, it covered a lot of stuff, but didn't necessarily fully explain what I had done, and in my mind as I'm doing this, there were thoughts of, well, if this isn't fully known, it's going to be okay. It's not going to impact anything. And so I wrote this letter, but then over the next few days, I had, conversations with Jeremy, I had conversations with my sister who had been through a similar situation. And I was just really encouraged by these people who had our backs, who had our backs. In order to do this, you have to fully come clean. And so over the next couple of days, it was fully coming clean with what I had done.
So you were talking not just about what was true, but you were getting to the very truth of the matter. You
Right.
were
Right.
laying it all out, being
Yeah.
as transparent as you possibly
Exactly.
could be.
Right.
And what were your emotions as that was being done? As you were getting, this is years of deception now.
Yeah.
What were your emotions? What were you going through?
After I told you, so for me, it when I talk about the pressure that I felt in my chest
Yes.
leading up, like nothing I'd ever felt before, the relief of getting that off of my chest was a feeling also like I've never felt before in the other direction. A feeling of relief of I finally unchained this anchor that I've been dragging around for so long in our relationship. And not even thinking at the time, by doing this, I may have freed myself from this burden I've been carrying, but I now have put my burden
It's
on
now
her.
just beginning to start for Lisa.
Yeah.
So Lisa, did you read the letter to her? Did you just give it to her? What was the understanding? So you got the letter.
Yeah, he gave me the letter.
In the morning, afternoon, evening?
Oh, no, it was the
Afternoon?
afternoon. I was standing on a bathroom counter scraping wallpaper border off and completely unaware of what
hands you the letter?
was going to happen. Yeah. From the first part of our marriage, I had that little seed of doubt. The letter led me to believe that it was a lot less than it was. He had actually been having an affair with this woman for the past 2 years. So especially through the last few years, I just really felt an unsettledness. He traveled a lot with work, but he was always home in the evenings. We were the normal-looking family.
Yes.
But I always had that little seed of doubt, and it really, the only way I can explain it, I felt crazy. I just felt like, what's wrong with me that
As if you shouldn't be feeling this. This
What?
is your husband, you should trust him.
What's wrong with me that only certain times he travels. I just can't, I couldn't keep it together. It was really, it took a physical toll on me. But so, actually, when he gave me the letter, to say the least, it was not pretty. I ended up leaving that afternoon, and I went actually at Jeremy and Julie's house. Jeremy had to read the letter to me because I just couldn't get it together to read it. And it was through, so that was a Friday afternoon, it was through that weekend that the length of time, I found out that the first affair was indeed true. And then some questions that I had asked him, through that weekend, the answers I got were actually lies also. So it was a lot because it just kept going on. It wasn't like I found out one truth in a minute and then the story was revealed. It just felt like it took days.
This has to really mess with your mindset when you have a certain view to suddenly just be yanked around back and forth. Yeah.
It, in a crazy way, now, it was a relief. I finally, after all these years, knew that the unsettled feeling I had was true. I knew that, one, it wasn't in my head. I really thought there was something wrong with me, that how could we have this marriage and I'm so untrusting of him. But hindsight, I'm pretty sure God was trying to pave this path for us. So it was almost like I had already grieved through time.
Over a long period of time.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, but that was a rough weekend, to say the least.
Yeah. So you said earlier that when the first letter came, you don't think your marriage would have survived that.
Mm-mm.
What do you think was different now, years later, almost 11 years later? What was different for you that gave you that sense that this marriage is going to make it, or it could make it?
Well, the first thing is we had a relationship with Christ. Individually, as a family, we had established that foundation. And we had time. We built more of a family, a life together. We had future.
And I think even what she was talking about, the physical stuff that we went through, and that span of time, really just kind of helping us. That for one brought out the horrible truth that I had to tell, but also just helping our hearts grow closer together.
You have memories together surrounding challenges, and so that really kind of bonded you. What the children? Did you reveal to them? Did you talk with your children about this? And if so, how did that work?
Unfortunately, our son was home during this weekend, and it was, Seth told me on Friday, actually that Saturday night, he was at home and he slept on the couch downstairs, and I just wanted to be close to him, so I went down and I slept on the floor beside the couch. So somewhere in the middle of the night, we are now fighting again, and Ryan woke up and heard some of the really, really awful things that I was saying to him. And so that was when he needed to be out of the house. It wasn't a healthy situation for Ryan. But our son just has the most sensitive heart. So he just was right there for me. He was right there with me.
How was it? From your perspective?
With Ryan, with Hannah being older, we sat down, and I told her in our living room, and that was obviously very strained for a while. With Ryan, we sat down and didn't give detail, and this is after. At this point, also we had started counseling, and so we kind of reached out to our counselor to help. What do you tell at a certain age? What do you tell your kid at a certain age? And so we didn't go into detail and exactly. He knew that I made a mistake, that I fell, and things were going to be different for a while. I was staying in Marysville with my dad and my stepmom for that week following, and so I could see the impact.
And it's like a secondary impact, isn't it? It's like the ripple effects. Let's talk about the healing process now.
Yes,
we have about. Guys, you're doing. This is really the first time that you have shared it in this public a way
with more than one or two people.
Yes, and I just want to let you know you're doing a great job of that. Thank you. In the healing process, you reached out, or you were directed to an interesting resource because this counselor had gone through the same thing. It was his wife that had the affair. And we at Encompass, we refer many couples that way because of that very dynamic. And so tell us about, you get started with this counselor and he takes you through an intensive. Talk about that a little bit.
It comes by its name the right way. We started with a couple of individual sessions until we could get scheduled for the intensive. And in this intensive session, you learn a lot about yourself and your significant other. I mean, everything. He is really good at what he does, and he was able to just help us break everything down back to what may have caused us to do things and not just this, but things throughout our life.
Yes.
So going back to when we were young, it was at that point the best thing that we could have possibly had for our healing process, because in that time, the time we got to spend together, just the time bonding and seeing each other at a completely broken down state and starting that rebuilding.
And this is a multi-day thing,
oh,
right?
Yeah,
and
yeah.
so we're talking almost a week.
You're talking 4 days.
4 days, all day long. You have homework that you're doing.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
We stayed in a hotel in Dayton, so that way we could not be interrupted by phones, emails, anything like that. We had homework in the evenings that we worked on, and our lunch break even. So it was intense.
Intensive.
It was
intense.
Yes.
And Satan was on the attack during that too. That's a. There's more to the story, but he was under attack because there was something pretty amazing happening through that.
So, can you describe for us kind of the difference between living in a low resolution relationship where there's so much hidden and there's confusion, and now more of a high resolution? You still face challenges, I'm sure, but what's the difference? How does that feel different?
I would say for me, the thing that when I first found out, my first reaction was, what did I do? It was about me. I wasn't enough. I obviously wasn't doing something. But now that I have had, the counseling, the support, the time to really hear God speak to my heart, I didn't let Seth in like I should have. And that has been the biggest change for me now, is to not feel like I have to do everything. I really can rely on him, and it's okay. It doesn't make me less of a person, and that makes him feel the way he needs to feel as a man and a husband and a father even.
For me, I think it was my ability to be vulnerable. Not a word men like to use necessarily, vulnerability. But she's seen me cry in the last 6 months, I think, more than the rest of our lives together. You know.
Do you have a budget for like Kleenex?
Yeah, we have it on stock. So Jeff has glasses, we have Kleenex. The lanes of communication and the ability to be vulnerable around her and not always have to carry this myself in a certain way and just truly be able to be me. And it's these last 6 months have been, can't even put into words how great they've been compared to the first 14 and a half years of our marriage. Just the ability to be open and share and be transparent with each other.
So we're so proud of you, and I'd like for you to, as you look around this room now, this answer goes out here, and I know you've been talking out there, but what would your counsel be to anyone here who is either personally dealing with maybe a similar, doesn't even have to be sexual, but there's just hiddenness. There's something they're hiding, there's something that they don't feel safe in sharing. Talk to them. What would your counsel be?
Mine would be, don't be afraid to take the step to come forward with whatever it is. As devastating as that time was, and as much as I don't want to feel that ever again, I actually wouldn't change it for anything, because we are so much better now than even the best I thought we were. I wouldn't change it. I don't want to go back and do it again. So we're not going to. But I wouldn't change the new story that we have. You know, I thought I knew it. You know, I had a plan for it. I had it all set up. But I wouldn't change our new story for anything.
So when I look at having to do what I did, to what I knew I had to do to come clean with Lisa, was the hardest thing I've ever had to do in my life. And I hope and pray that there's not anybody, I would hate to see this in anybody's marriage. It can be like the weight of the world is on your shoulder, but it's something that had to be done. And I would just want to encourage that no matter what you think, I knew when I did this that this could potentially ruin my marriage, my family, everything. It could have ruined my life. I knew that. But I finally had the breakthrough that I needed. That God was finally able to break through and allow my heart to be open to that no matter what the outcome was, I had to come clean. And I would just encourage that no matter what, God's going to take care of us. I'm more aware of that now than I've ever been in my life. He's going to take care of us. But one of the things that I mentioned vulnerability. One of the things that I would highly encourage is if you ever have the thought that this couldn't happen to me, no matter what, and again, it doesn't have to be sexual, but that it couldn't happen to me, I never thought that. I never thought I was in that same boat. But not being willing to acknowledge our vulnerabilities is a big mistake. If you know you have them, keeping them at the forefront of your prayer list, of sharing, of being able to meet with guys like we have the ability to, it's the hardest thing you'll have to do, but you could end up with the greatest thing that ever happened in your life.
I like him so much better now too. I really do.
Oh,
I mean, it's just so emotional for us. I mean, we just communicate so much better. Everything is just better. He doesn't have that wall up.
Yeah. We are so grateful for you taking this step. This is an important kind of first step. And
For sure.
we just express our appreciation to them. I want to just, in a couple of minutes, just some possible next steps, and these are listed on your outline. We don't believe that there's any one size that fits everyone, and so we've attempted to come up with some options that if you find yourself in a situation like they've described, or where there's deception and just not the closeness, we really encourage you to find some things. And I would say start with the first one. Complete the questions for self-reflection on the back to explore your own transparency. We won't do it here, but take some time to do this because it's revealing. It can point you in a direction that could be very helpful. And then there are a number of other just possibilities there. I want to say that the partnership between Encompass and the gathering makes us both stronger. I so love being able to work together in this way. And so hopefully we can continue providing resources that affect not only you as men. That's important. We need to keep doing this. We need to have these locker rooms. But our vision is beyond that. Who do you affect? Who is it? Your spouse? Is it your kids? Etc. Jeremy, I'm going to ask you to just come up. Could we just stretch your hands out towards Seth and Lisa? If there's anyone else that knows Seth and Lisa, Kara, you and Jeff want to come up as well? Let's just pray, and then we'll be done.
God, I thank you that you are a God that redeems stories out of destruction to make them stories of celebration. God, I thank you for Seth and Lisa. I thank you for their courage to follow you in some dark, dark days, to cling to you when they felt like they had nothing else to cling to, and to be willing to make some choices and then to even linger in some conversations that probably everything in their bodies wanted them to run away. But they stayed in it because of you and because of your strength. God, we thank you that what we heard today was not just a celebration story for Seth and Lisa, but it's a God story.
Yes.
And the same God that is at work in Seth and Lisa's marriage and relationship is the same God that we get to call on and who's working in our lives. So God, I pray that you would not only allow us to celebrate what we heard this morning, but that you would use it as an opportunity to challenge us to take steps closer to you and what you may be calling us to do in the next steps of the relationships that we have. God, that we too would be able to stand up and declare your greatness, that you are faithful, that you are loving, that you take what's broken and you repair it and you make it whole. So God, I thank you for Seth and Lisa. I pray that you continue to protect this testimony as it goes forward. God, I pray that you use it over and over again to change the lives of families and marriages every time they get to tell about what you did. We give you the honor and the glory for what you've done and what you will do. And all God's people said,
Amen. Amen.